Boss and I exchange houses for the sake of some company tactic, but it turns messy when it gets steamy between us. And the chosen employee is Erin, my boss's assistant announced with a huge grin on her face. Everyone turned to look at me with varying emotions on their faces, most of which were in envy. I had no idea why they were envious when I had never wanted to be chosen in the first place. For once, my anonymity had not saved me from being the center of attention. Now I had somehow landed myself in a big mess without doing anything. Come on up, Erin. You have been chosen to host our boss for the next 2 months. What do you have to say for yourself? She said cheerfully. Begrudgingly, I made my way to the front where she was standing with Dexter, the boss. Dexter's icy eyes bore into me as I made my way to the front, and I felt myself internally squirm. He had always had an intimidating air about him, almost judgmental. The way he raked his eyes over me made me feel naked in front of everyone. I had to control myself so that I would not end up blushing. Once I made my way to the front, I made a short speech looking directly at the camera that had been set up. Greetings, I'm Erin, and I am a clerk at this company. I will be staying with my boss for the next 2 months. I am very excited about this experiment and look forward to good results, I said simply. Everyone clapped their hands. The assistant Sarah said a few more words, and then we all went back to work. I could hardly focus as I thought about how I was now going to have a roommate. Dexter was not the easiest person to work with, so I could only imagine what it was going to be like living with him. Not only that, but I panicked when I remembered the state of my apartment. I was on the verge of dilapidation. Everything was breaking. It was certainly nothing compared to where Dexter lived. Now I had to find a way to make it presentable for when he moved in on Monday. I vowed to find a way to get everything done that weekend. My house was going to be posted all over social media, so it had to look presentable. Monday. If you follow me down this path, you'll find the kitchen. It's not much to look at, but it satisfies all of my needs, I said to Dexter. I saw that he was inspecting every single inch of my house. For the cameras, he kept a neutral expression, but his aura made me uneasy. I finished my tour in my bedroom, which was the room I did the most work on. It was my pride and joy, my sanctuary, which I spent the most time on. It felt a bit vulnerable to show it to the whole world, but I had no choice. I opened the door and showed them my room. I heard Dexter gasp and my stomach got into a knot. He probably hated the room and thought it was too small. There was nothing I could do about it. I was not the one who landed him in this position. He did it to himself when he made some classist and tone-deaf remarks at a press conference. No one was ready for the PR nightmare that ensued. Our company was accused of underpaying and mistreatment of employees. The negative press ended up affecting business until they came up with a strategy. They decided to have Dexter live with an employee for 2 months. They wanted to prove that he was not only far from a classist, but that the company supported us enough to live a comfortable life. So now, here we were. I was incredibly nervous, but ready to do it. It was just going to be a long 2 months. Later that day. Shortly after the camera crew left, I told Dexter the plan for the day. I'm going to make food for us. Do you have any allergies? Please also hand me your phone so I can connect you to the Wi-Fi. After we eat, we can take a walk around the neighborhood and I'll show you all the places you need to know, like the grocery store. Is that okay, sir? I asked. I could not help but feel a little intimidated by how composed and stoic he was. Dealing with him at the office was very different from dealing with him in my own territory. The fact that he was taking his time to respond did not help. Okay, seems fine. I eat anything as long as it is healthy and not too full of fat, he responded. He then took off his suit jacket and sat himself in a chair. I had to fight back a sigh. I was not prepared for how toned his biceps were. When he propped his arm on his leg and bore those eyes into me, it was just too much. My heart started beating too fast and I had to leave. I decided to start making the food, not really sure how I was going to interact with him. He, on the other hand, seemed quite oblivious to how his beautiful arms had affected me. How long have you lived here? He asked casually. My aunt owns the flat. She allowed me to move in at a reduced rate 3 years ago, since the place still needs some work. She has been fixing up the place, but it is taking a while, I responded as I tried my hardest to focus on the vegetables in front of me. It's a nice place. Very vintage. My penthouse is pretty modern, but I don't like the decor. I need to change it when I move back in, he responded. Cool, I said, in an attempt to stop the conversation. I was feeling very much aware of his gaze, and it was making me feel slightly uncomfortable. How was I going to survive 2 more months of this? The next morning. We had a very uneventful first evening together. After dinner, I showed him around the neighborhood, and then we returned to the house. Each of us then got some work done. As the evening progressed, I realized that we had not discussed the sleeping arrangements. Luckily, he brought it up. "How are we going to sleep?" he inquired. "What do you prefer? I could take the couch," I suggested. "For 2 months? That will not do. We could share the bed." "You keep to your side and I keep to mine," he suggested. A shiver went down my spine at the thought of being so close to him. I was so unprepared for it, but I nodded. He went to bed earlier than I did, and I joined him an hour later. I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. We were woken up by my alarm shortly after. "You can shower first. I'll make us some coffee," I offered. He rose up from the bed and stretched his limbs. I was slightly mesmerized watching the tension leave his body. There was no lie that Dexter was an attractive man, and even in the morning he looked airbrushed. "Thank you. I will not be long," he promised as he made his way to the bathroom. It appeared that his long and my long were not the same. I finished drinking my coffee and cleaned the house while he was still bathing. When I checked the watch, it had taken him almost 45 minutes to shower. Just when I was about to knock on the door, I heard a scream. The scream was so high-pitched it was like a girl. I hurried to the bathroom to go and check in on him. He seemed to be okay, but was screaming. "What is going on?" I inquired. He had a shocked expression on his face when he said, "The water is freezing. Can you not make it a bit warmer?" His voice and body shook from the cold water, and I could not help but notice the way the droplets ran down his body. I could tell that he had worked hard to craft all the muscles. I was instantly transfixed by the scene and completely forgot what I had been called there for until he cleared his throat. I was brought back to reality, slightly embarrassed. Yet, in my attempt to act normal, I tried my hardest not to roll my eyes. "No, I cannot, because you probably finished the hot water. It will take a while for the geyser to warm up again since it is quite cold. I might as well boil some water for myself so that I can shower," I informed him. His eyes widened as he realized what had happened. "Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm used to having an unlimited supply of hot water," Dexter explained. "No problem," I told him. He then got out of the shower and I got ready. When I left the shower, I could tell that something was burning in the house. I was so panicked that I did not wear clothes before I made my way to the kitchen. That is where I saw Dexter burning something on the stove. He was desperately trying to get rid of the smoke to no avail. When he saw me, he breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "Does your window not open? I've been trying to get rid of the smoke for a while now." I chuckled a little bit and moved him out of the way so that I could open the window. "Did you not see the sandwiches are made for us? You do not have to cook when you're here. I'd like to remain with my kitchen intact," I said jokingly. "Sorry, I think you forgot to get dressed," he said sheepishly. I realized what state I was in and quickly left the kitchen, embarrassed for the second time in the last hour. A few days later. So far, Dexter and I have been living together in peace. I had to teach him how everything worked in the house, but luckily he was a fast learner. He never made the same mistake twice, which was a relief. We settled into a routine. In the morning, we would go to work together. He usually came home late, so I got home and cooked our food, then went about my business. In the evening, he came home and ate, then we both slept. We were cordial and respectful of each other and had no disagreements. Misunderstandings were bound to occur, but we made sure to sort those out civilly. By the end of the week, I was starting to get used to him. Well, I did the most I could due to how we were forced to be very close in my tiny apartment. He seemed to be around each and every corner of my house. His musky smell mixed with freshly laundered fabric aroused a desire to have him near me at all times. I was like a moth to a flame. It was surely not attraction, as I knew the danger in that. No, it was just fascination. He flooded my senses from morning to evening, and I wished for reprieve. Luckily, he went out with his friends on Friday night, offering me a few hours to recuperate from the roller coaster of emotions. He got back home at 1 a.m. I looked at him for only a moment before sleep claimed me once again. As I was settling back into my peaceful slumber, I was suddenly awoken by his pacing. He walked from one end of the room to another several times, which distracted me. I couldn't fall back asleep, so I promptly sat up and asked him, "Dexter, what is going on? Why are you restless? I'm trying to sleep." I looked at him and he looked like death itself. His face showed great worry and his hands appeared to be shaky. "I'm so sorry, I really can't sleep. My mind is going at 1,000 miles an hour," he explained. "Why is that the case?" I asked him curiously. "Well, tonight, when I told you that I went out with some friends, I was hoping to convince them to help me out with something at the company. All was going well until they said that they felt as if I was running my company down, he began. His sudden confession awoke pity for him, and I suddenly felt like embracing him. Hey, please do not be so hard on yourself. Sometimes we put our foot in our mouth. That does not mean that we are not good people, I consoled him, caressing his arm. I could feel tension in it due to the stress, which further melted my heart. He nodded, but it appeared that he had a hard time believing me. I could tell that he was experiencing deep anxiety. His friend's words seemed to have cut into him. It was weird seeing my boss so insecure because he always put on a facade of being in control. Everything he did seemed intentional. He was confident, calm, collected, and never insecure. Even though the following day was a Saturday, I needed to get my beauty sleep. However, I realized that I was not going to sleep if he was pacing around the room, so I got up and told him to follow me. I then started to make some ginger tea for him while he ranted about his evening. Maybe the problem is that you care too much about what people think, I suggested after listening to him confess to how he felt like an imposter sometimes. How can I not? I have my father's footsteps to fill in. If I don't make a profit, then I will be voted out. He sounded so helpless. You speak a lot about making your father proud, but how about you? What about what you want to achieve within the company? I tried to change his view. His helplessness made me view him in a more human light than the stoic Dexter I was used to. I hated to admit it, but this vulnerable side of him made him look even more attractive. Life was not fair. Even when he was downcast, he was still good looking. He chuckled a little bit and then said, maybe one day I will gain everyone's trust and I can implement my goals. Until then, I just have to stick to the status quo. I see what you mean, I responded to him. Thank you so much. I needed to offload, otherwise I was going to explode. He lightly touched my hand and smiled. The sudden touch caught me off guard, so I quickly gave him the ginger tea. He drank it, and then he went back to bed. A week later. The feedback from the first video was quite good, but there was some complaints. People wanted more content from us throughout the week, not just a weekly feedback video. The audience wanted to see him doing chores like a normal person. This presented a new challenge because I knew for a fact that he sucked at doing chores. When we got feedback from PR, we decided to have a strategy meeting at lunch. I know that you can help me, but as we both know, I suck at chores, he started. Well, suck is an understatement, but yes, I chuckled lightly. Would you be able to help me with some of them? He asked, his eyes pleading. Now, how can I say no to those puppy eyes? I asked lightly. Good, because I'm all out of tricks, Dexter breathed a sigh of relief. Really? All you have in your arsenal is puppy eyes? I think that you need to increase your arsenal, I teased. Trust me, for this situation, all I need is the puppy eyes. But if the situation were different, I have much more to offer, he smirked. I could not help but imagine what he meant by that. Was it me or was he flirting? Never! That would be ridiculous. I highly doubted that he was into men, but stranger things have happened. Well, then I'm lucky that I never have to find out then, right? I asked as I looked into his eyes. We glanced at each other for just a moment and then I looked at his lips. Shortly after I looked away and felt a blush creeping up. Is it really luck? He continued. Either he was flirting outrageously or he actually thought he was being funny. Either way, I felt myself cornered and my breath a little short. I knew I needed to curb this conversation because I was getting too flustered. Things had not been the same since that night I comforted him. He had become much more friendly toward me. It appeared that my being there for him at a difficult point established rapport between us. Who knew? Maybe one day we would become friends. 2 weeks later. It had officially been a month since Dexter moved in with me. The past 2 weeks had been quite interesting as I was teaching him chores. He was a very quick learner, but we did have hiccups along the way. An example would be the time that I asked him to help me with chopping some ingredients in the kitchen. As he was cutting his vegetables, I noticed that he was not cutting them in the way that I wanted. Dexter, I think that you are cutting them wrong. Can I show you how to? I asked him. He paused and put his hands up in defeat. I noticed that something was not quite right, but I could not place it, he laughed, a deep rumble that came from deep inside. Of course I schooled myself to not react too much. Oh, yes, consistency seems to be the problem. I think that it's a very important thing, whether in the kitchen or the boardroom, don't you think? I tried to make an analogy. I found that explaining things to him using business terms made them simpler for him. I get what you mean, but try having my hand-eye coordination. He threw his hands out in frustration. Now, don't beat yourself up about it. You are already good at so many things. Give me the cutting board and let me show you what I mean. I endearingly told him, finding his frustration cute. He handed it to me, and then I started expertly chopping the vegetables, but then stopped due to sudden pain. I had somehow managed to cut myself. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry. Let me go and get the first aid kit," he exclaimed as he ran off. I was about to tell him how to use it, but he surprised me because he knew exactly how. Within a few minutes, he had wrapped my hand in a bandage. "It is my fault. I am so sorry." He made a face I had never seen him make before. His eyes widened a little, and he bit his lower lip. I found my lip twitching a little bit. "What's wrong? Must I kiss it better?" he continued, with a playful smirk on his lips. His adorable side was just doing me in, and I needed to get the situation under control. "No, you have done enough. Thank you so much," I exclaimed. "I think that we have enough vegetables already. Let me do the rest of the cooking. You can give me instructions," he suggested. So that is what we did. He finished cooking the rest of the food and listened to all of my instructions. To make matters better, I had a view of him in that cute apron, cooking so passionately, which made him out to be so hot. But then again, I pushed those thoughts out of my head because God forbid I get a crush on my own boss, right? But I guess we were far ahead of a crush by then. A week later. It was a week after the kitchen incident. Dexter and I grew closer. We started to develop a bit of a friendship, and my opinion of him started to change. He was no longer so elusive to me. He was a bit more down to earth, which I appreciated. I got a text from him one Saturday morning. "Hey, I have just come from a meeting and I want to play a game of golf. Would you like to join me?" he texted me. "I am terrible at it, but I am free," I responded. He sent me the location and I got dressed. It struck me as a little odd that he wanted to spend time with me outside of work or household chores. However, I was bored out of my mind, so I made that impulsive choice. Little did I know that something was about to go down. When I joined him on the course, he showed me the ropes. He was very patient with me and made sure to guide me slowly. Due to this, he was a bit closer to me than usual, and for some strange reason, it made my heart beat a little faster. We were laughing and joking when suddenly we got interrupted. "Fancy seeing you here. I'm surprised that you are here having fun while your company is tanking," a man said. I turned to look at the person. It was a tall, attractive man who had the ugliest sneer on his face. I observed Dexter and noticed that his joyful facial expression had changed since that man appeared. "Max, how are you?" Dexter forced out, crossing his arms. Suddenly, the atmosphere felt much colder. "You should enjoy your off time. You will have a lot of it when you are no longer CEO. "Who's this?" he suddenly asked, as his eyes narrowed on me. He scrutinized every part of me with no shame, and I could not help but squirm. "At least your taste in guys hasn't changed, although this one is not quite muscular," Max said snidely. "This is Aaron, my employee, who I am staying with for the month. Now, if you would let us get back to our game," he dismissed Max. "Aaron did not say he wants me to leave, though," he drawled out, eyes teasing. "Stop making Aaron uncomfortable. I do not need to talk to you right now." Dexter rolled his eyes. "Chill, I will not steal him from you." And then, reaching his hand forward to me, he said, "Max, if you ever want a better golf teacher, contact me." He winked as he left. I was left standing there confused out of my mind. "What is wrong with him?" I asked, slightly annoyed. "We have a complicated history," he said, with a strange look on his face. I started to put the pieces together in my head. "You mean you two have been involved?" I whispered. "Yes, I keep all my relationships discreet. My family knows that I am gay. I was actually glad to be paired up with you. I know you are too, so I figured it would be something that we have common ground on," he shared. "You know that you could have capitalized on me, right? It would have looked good for the company since it's just been Pride Month," I reminded him. "I know, but that is not a nice thing to do to someone. Would you have agreed?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment and then shook my head. "I wish I had known you were gay, though," I carried on. "Why? Afraid I might awaken something within you?" His voice became teasing. He had no idea how crazy that teasing got me sometimes. I swallowed and worked hard to control myself. "No idea what you mean." I looked away. He knew he was attractive. There was no way I was going to tell him. The next week. It was just perfect that one night there was a power outage. To make matters worse, it was very cold. Both our phones ended up dying, so we had to sit together in silence. "You know, I have just realized how I know nothing about you besides the fact that you work for me," he mused. "You have lived with me for a while and you know nothing?" I laughed, and just then I yawned. "Maybe we should go to bed. I think it is getting late," he changed the topic. We then went to bed, but I could not sleep. It was too cold and I was losing my mind. "You know, the best way to get warm is sharing body warmth," he said out of the blue. "You wouldn't mind?" I asked, my voice shaking a little bit. The next thing I knew, he had pulled me into his embrace. The thought of breaking away crossed my mind, but I enjoyed just how warm he was. I moved closer and I welcomed the warmth. Not so long after, I was out like a light. The next morning, I pulled him closer to me, enjoying how his body felt on mine. It had been too long since I had cuddles, and I did not want the moment to end. "Wakey, wakey," he said. I slowly opened my eyes, and there he was. We were silent for a moment, and I relished in how good being in his embrace felt. He suddenly moved the hand that was on my waist, and I felt tingles. I felt my cheeks heating up almost immediately. Who knew what he had done to me? All I knew was that I was enjoying it a little too much. "Everything okay?" he drawled out mischievously. Without thinking, I tried to climb over him to escape, but he trapped me. Now I was on top of him, looking into his eyes, which had trapped the morning light. "Now look at what you have done. If I crush you, it's your own fault," I said slowly. I felt joy when he gasped a little bit, a light blush on his cheeks. "I'm not complaining," he winked after a moment in silence. After that moment, I realized that we were in a compromising position. I made as if to get up, but found myself falling. He peeked down from the bed and roared with laughter. "Are you really so quick to want to get away from me? Look, now you have fallen," he laughed. "Stop laughing and help me up," I growled. He complied, but only after pulling my leg about it once more. 2 weeks later. Things had been hectic between the two of us since the morning after the cuddle. I discovered a new side to him that intrigued me. An unspoken competition had suddenly come over us. We both wanted the other one to admit to being attracted to them. Due to this, there was a lot of touching and teasing between us. We still ended up cuddling a lot, but we never crossed that line. I found it so much fun to tease him and make him blush. I wanted him to make the first move so that I would win. I just could not wait to get home where we could interact without prying eyes. As all of this was going on, the day of his departure was looming, and I was dreading it. Those 2 months were actually more fun than I thought they would be. Despite the flirting, it was nice to have someone around the house. We had also developed a pretty solid friendship. Whatever happened next, I knew I had a friend in him. I decided that I wanted to make our last night special, and I knew just how. I had no idea that he was well ahead of me. I knew he had a weakness for baked goods, so I made some pastries for him to take home with him. He came home later because he had to attend a meeting about the experiment. He had been on edge the past few days over the results. There had been some negative comments calling him a poser who did not really appreciate what people were going through, but I assured him that he should not focus on them. He tried his hardest, and I thought it was enough. I made sure to include that in my review video about the experience. I was just thinking about that when he entered the kitchen. He looked extremely worn out and tired, so my first instinct was to check on him. "How did it go?" I asked. "They say the audience is not convinced and I need to stay till the end of the year," he said. I was shocked for a moment, but then a smile spread across my face. "Wait, you are not upset?" Dexter inquired curiously. "Why would I be? At least this year, I will not spend Christmas alone," I explained. Suddenly, he looked away from me, and I could tell that he was hiding something. "Actually, the meeting went well, and I am leaving tomorrow. What I have just said to you was a prank. I wanted to see your reaction," he smiled sheepishly. I felt incredible rage flood through me at that moment, along with some tears. "You do not joke about things like that. You got my hopes up for nothing," I responded. "In all honesty, I thought you would be bummed about me staying. I'm sure that you have been waiting for me to leave," he defended himself. "I thought our time together meant more than that. I baked you pastries for goodness sake. Why would I be relieved that you would leave me?" I asked. "It is not like I am leaving the company. You'll still see me," he insisted. "But there will always be that divide between us because you're my boss," I sighed as I turned to go and check the pastries. However, I found myself unable to move because he had grabbed my hand. I tried to pull it away from him, but He had a strong grip. He then stepped closer to me and whispered in my neck, "You and I both know that we are closer than that." I felt shivers go down my spine at his words. Tentatively, I spoke my mind. Maybe not close enough. I dared to stare him down, to see if he would dare. "Is this close enough?" he asked, and then his lips crashed into mine. The only way I can describe it is that the slow flame that had ignited between us was now a raging furnace. All my body wanted was for him to be closer to me. I forgot everything else around us and saw only him. We kissed till our lips hurt, and we had to come up for air, expressing all the tension we had been suppressing for weeks. I had to admit it, it was so worth the wait to finally have my way with him. The next morning, I was the first to wake up in the morning. I was greeted by the most beautiful, peaceful face. All I wanted to do was lie there forever. Eventually, he opened his eyes. "Morning, sunshine," I greeted. "We finally did it," he responded. "We crossed the line. Do you regret it?" I asked immediately. "I have wanted to kiss you for a very long time. No, I do not regret it. I do wish we had done this sooner," Dexter responded. "The waiting made it more fun," I responded. "I agree. What do you want to do now?" he questioned me. "I just want to lie here and enjoy this moment," I responded lazily. So that is what we did, till we had to get up and go to work. The PR strategy worked wonders and Dexter regained public favor. We told everyone that we had become very good friends since staying together, which was the perfect cover for us to continue seeing each other. One day, we will be ready to share our connection with the world, but for now, we are keeping it a secret. Have you ever had a crush on a colleague? Did you act on it? The end. Thanks for watching. Consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to support our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.